the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you, exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful, tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud, shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful, tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud, shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise
Accountability
together.
starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
There's only one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
Good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have an exciting weekend planned. I missed my co-hosts. I guess they'll be back next week. Diane will be back from Madrid, and I'm looking forward to her coming back and sharing her experiences there. I'm expecting a call in somewhere around 10:15, 10:30 from former Newark West Ward Councilman Ron C. Rice to have a conversation about, we'll talk about a lot of things, but the thing that prompted the conversation or me inviting him to join on the show was comments that we had back and forth on a thread which kind of began to talk about, how the presidential primary is shaping up and the tonality of some people now who in the beginning started off with a great deal of bravado as they were pushing the false narrative of Joe Biden being electable, Joe Biden being inevitable, Joe Biden being unbeatable, invincible, and we see that just never, ever was the case. And so if it was never the case, then we have to conclude that the media just conspired to lie. They conspired to make up a lie. And so in the making up the lie, what they were saying also was that as they were promoting this air of invincibility, they were saying to all of the other camps, hey, I need you to sign on to this pledge that you're going to back, whoever the nominee is, right? And so they were pushing this narrative to have him be the nominee and to give false information about polling numbers and such. And then they were also saying, so now as we go to rig this thing, we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're all going to back the nominee. And so now what you see is a rigged system. You see a lying media, and you see a lot of backpedaling from people now because they see more and more that Bernie Sanders may very well be the nominee. And so all bets are off now, and folks are pushing toward a broker convention. And so in the conversation that I was having in the thread, what Councilman Rice alluded to was that Bernie Sanders, as a congressman and as a senator, he was asking what his body of work was, what he's actually accomplished. And, I'll have this monologue, and, if Ron is listening, then he'll have a heads up in terms of how I want to discuss this. If you recognize, well, firstly, you have to understand the makeup of the House of Representatives and the makeup of the Senate, right? So there are 400 plus people, congressmen and women, in the House of Representatives, and you have 100 senators. And if we can all agree that there is a swamp there, meaning that you have corporate-owned elected officials in Washington, if you have an individual or even a couple of individuals who are not corporately owned, who come in really riding the wave of citizen voter support, They did the right work, grassroots work. They got people to believe in them, and they didn't take any money, so they're not beholden to anybody. Well, from day one, they're under attack because they are a virus, right, or an antibody to the corrupt system. So when they come in, they're coming in to try to repair a broken system, and the system doesn't want to be repaired. All of those congressmen and women and all of those senators are there for a very specific purpose. And so if you go in, so for instance, if you trust and believe and support me and send me to Washington, it's important that I manage your expectation. And that's why when folks say, well, what is your platform? Again, I could talk to you about all of the things. I could give you those. I could literally copy bullet points from 20 years ago from whoever was Congressman Donald M. Payne Sr. And I could list those things because those things are still needed, right? The reason there has not been any transformative change is because there's no political power. There's no economic power. And so if you sent me to Washington as your congressional representative, I would only have the power that you gave me, but I would only have the power of one vote amongst 400 plus congressmen and women. And then if you understand civics, beyond that, it has to go to the Senate. And then beyond that, the president has to sign it. So, if I'm going in as an antibody, meaning that I see that the entire thing is corrupt, the likelihood of me being able to achieve anything is going to be slim to none in terms of passing legislation, right? That wouldn't really be my goal. My goal would be to use the platform that that those really are not hardwood floors, but it's rotted plywood. That would be my goal. And then through doing that, to arouse your political curiosity, to have you become more involved, to help bring more people down to Washington with me to fight, to ultimately be in a position to shift the balance of economic and political power. That is the goal. But anybody who tells you any differently, anybody who tells you that one person is going to go down there and is going to set all kinds of policies and have a body of work, they're mistaken. So if you were to go and look at AOC, for instance, if you were to use the litmus test that Senator Ron Rice was using in that thread, and you were to say, well, okay, how many bills has she sponsored? How many bills has she co-sponsored? How many bills have passed? Right? You would have to conclude, well, if it's based on that, if that is the measuring stick, she didn't get a whole lot done. But she got a whole lot done, didn't she? She made us aware of an entirely corrupt system, didn't she? When she's doing her queries and bringing people before her committees, she's exposing them. And then she's going on social media and she's talking about it to arouse your political curiosity. So if anybody in the Bronx believed that they were going to put her down there and all of a sudden she was going to pass sweeping legislation as one congresswoman, it's not going to happen. Now, let's take Ilhan Omar, Representative Ilhan Omar, or Representative Rashida Tlaib, or Representative Ayanna Pressley, all of them. If you were to use Ron Rice's litmus test, and you were to say in their first term, what legislation did they pass? Right? But would you say that Ilhan Omar was ineffective? Would you say that Ayanna Pressley was ineffective? Would you say that Rashida Tlaib was ineffective? Or would you say that what they did was shined a bright light to let those people who didn't know how corrupt the system is, to let them know just exactly how corrupt the system is? And beyond that, to understand that the makeup of the House of Representatives is such that if you like what it is that they're talking about, if you believe that some of those policies that they want to eradicate and the ones that they want to implement, if you believe that those policies, that shift in policy would improve your standing in life here, then you need to get in the fight, right? You need to contribute. Whether you live in their congressional district or not, you need to contribute in some way, shape, or form to their specific fight. And then they're pointing out other congressional races that are going on that you can get involved in too. And so now, if you were to do that and get involved in all of these, then you would shift the balance of power even more. I mean, I want you to understand what happened. So if we celebrate how in 2018, we took the House, right? Everybody was talking about what a momentous occasion that was. Well, the work isn't done, right? Because beyond taking the House, you got to hold it. And you got to hold it in the midst of pushing forward things that your opponents don't find to be beneficial to them. Right? They're threatening to them. And so we see that now. So what is it? In the Bronx, I think AOC has 17 people who are primarying her right now. So if you were to say that she was an antibody that was shot into the system to try to mitigate the damage that it continues to do, well, the system now has reacted and has sent white blood cells, if you will, and said, we have an invader within our system and we have to eliminate her. And that's happening in Minnesota, that's happening in Boston, right? It's happening wherever you had a turnover of leadership in the House where you're having this pushback. So to say that when you have a fight like that going on a regular basis about things that will or won't lead to transformative change, to suggest that you should be moderate in your approach doesn't fare well, has never fared well, historically has never fared well for foundational Black Americans in particular and poor people in general. So to have a fighter, to have somebody who's in there and who's fighting is the important thing. And that is the thing that I want to impress upon Senator Rice, or former Councilman Ron C. Rice, when he calls in. So I'll wait for his call. I think he said he was going to call about 10:30, 10:15, 10:30. But while I wait for that, I want to know, if you didn't hear the episode yesterday where I had current councilman, Paul Inman of the East Ward in Irvington on the show. And then I had some callers in from Irvington to talk about how corrupt things are there. If you weren't moved to do something, to get involved, to find a candidate who is working outside of that Democrat apparatus in Irvington, then I don't know what will move you. If you heard how there are these no-show jobs, how a building that is privately owned, that the mayor of Irvington has his political campaign headquarters in, the CFO of Irvington is part owner of the building and is renting the building. So he's the CFO of Irvington, and so he manages the finances, right? And so he's renting the building to Irvington, the first floor for, I believe it's the planning board is on the first floor in that building. And so he's getting a salary from the township of Irvington, and he's getting a cut of whatever they're paying for rent. And then whatever they're paying for rent, as we indicated yesterday, they set it below the threshold that would have required them to send it out for bid. Now, the important thing about sending something out for bid is that you get the best price. So you have, and if we can conclude that the CFO, along with the chief executive officer, who is Tony Voss, ought to be looking out for the best interest of the taxpayers in Irvington, well, the question is, could there have been a better opportunity? Could you have gotten better space for less money? Or better space for the same money? Right? So if that was the amount of money that you wanted to spend, whatever that dollar amount was, to say, look, we want to spend $30,000. What is the best we can get for $30,000? Or was the best that you could get what was something that's owned by, in part by the CFO who you employ, and the chairperson of the Democratic Party there in Irvington? And then Mr. Inman also spoke about no-show jobs. He talked about patronage. He talked about nepotism. And listen, on the surface, and this is nuance, I don't have an issue per se with nepotism, except when you're hiring not the best people you can get. So if you're hiring your family member simply because your family member wants to buy a home or a car, or can't afford to pay their mortgage or their child care, or they just want to have a job, or you just want to hire them so that they can help push through contracts and other things that you want without, any resistance, then those are the wrong reasons. If you, however, have like an incredibly talented family member, then certainly the residents of that particular town ought to be able to benefit from said acumen, and so you should seek to employ them. But that's almost never the case, so I'm looking forward to. I think I'm going to be meeting with Councilman Inman this weekend to get some information from him. There are also Destin. Gentleman who is running for Destin Nichols is running for council in the township of Irvington, and he's going to be on the show more, and we're going to unpack as much of this stuff as we can. And I got some text messages yesterday from some people who want to now, and I'm excited about this, they actually want to take over a portion of this show. To talk about the various issues that are going on in Irvington. So between Destin Nichols, I can't remember the 80-year-old lady that I met with, but her, I'm going to pull her name up because Miss McDaniels, thank you. So Eloise McDaniels. So between, if you look at Miss Eloise McDaniels, who's 80 years old and is a pistol there in Irvington, attending board meetings, raising hell. Destin Nichols, who ran well, I'm not going to say an unsuccessful race. He ran a very successful race because he turned out a tremendous amount of voters, but he did not get the requisite number of voters to win the election. But he's back in the saddle and he's running again. And then you have Paul Inman, who is going to be running off of the mayor's ticket. So as these people, and then Eric Dixon called in yesterday, and my understanding is that he's running for a seat in Irvington as well. So as these people become more motivated, get more involved, I'm sure there's more information that's going to come out about this administration and the things that it's doing. And hopefully it will encourage more residents to be more vocal about those things. And then we'll bring that information here. But the question then remains, once you have the information, what is it that you're going to do with it? And that's kind of where we always wind up. There was a headline. Menendez calls for open New Jersey presidential primary. And I got to explain what that means, but I'm going to read a little bit of it first. Right? But he's calling for an open presidential primary. And this is what he says. It says, U.S. Senator Bob Menendez wants New Jersey Democrats to hold an open presidential primary, becoming the first major party leader to oppose organization lines in the race for the White House. So when we say that we should tear down line A, right? So he's saying that's an organization line A. So you have line A, and then so when he ran, you had Menendez as the U.S. senator, and then you had whatever mayors, you had whatever state assembly people, and any other people down ballot. But when he ran, because he was a U.S. senator, I believe he was top of the ticket, right? And so part of why you want to have what he's referring to here as an organization line is because having the organization line, you're pulling votes from everywhere you're lined up with somebody. So if your name is lined up with the folks the incumbents in orange, then when the voters go, they vote down the line, you get those votes. If it's in East Orange, if it's in Patterson, if it's in Camden, you're getting all of those votes. So this organization line, he had no problem with when he was top of the ticket, and he could benefit from it, right? But he's saying that in this presidential election, just this one, not previous ones, not the one in 2016, not the one in 2012, not the one in 2008, but this one, he wants to do away with organization lines. Let me read on. He said, I would implore the county chairs to have a separate column for an open presidential primary while allowing usual ballot bracketing for down ballot races. Now, remember we were talking about down ballot, how important down ballot was? And Diane kept saying, explain to them what down ballot is. Well, here we go. So he says that he wants to have the bracketing, to have the organization line for the down ballot, but he wants to separate the down ballot from the presidential race. Let me keep going. Bracketing for down ballot races for U.S. Senate and House races down to county and municipal government. Menendez said. So even municipal and county government, he doesn't want them associated with the presidential race. It says under Menendez's proposal, presidential candidates and their delegate slate would run on a separate line or column in the June 2nd New Jersey primary with organization lines existing for other offices. Now, because what it requires is this. They're setting up for the possibility of a brokered convention. Right? And so they don't want to take sides yet. They had hoped that by now there would be a clear front runner. So if the front runner was Joe Biden and his poll numbers were through the roof, then Menendez wouldn't be calling for removing the bracketing because it would be beneficial. So you would have Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, and then all of the municipal, county, and state down ballot candidates would be able to benefit from his coattails. Call or go.
Hey, it's Ron Rice. How you doing, brother?
Brother Rice, how are you, man, councilman?
I'm good, brother, man. Good to always hear your voice.
Listen, man, we gotta set your Skype up, because when I told some folks that you'd be calling in, they said they miss your face. So yeah. So we got to work on setting up.
I'm walking to the train station, so my face doesn't look that good in all this cold air right now.
All right, so listen, there was a very particular thing that I wanted to talk to you about because we were in a thread and I kind of gave the viewers and listeners a heads up about it and what we were discussing. And I said that it would just kind of take a long time for my thumbs to type it. You would ask the question about what Senator Bernie Sanders has accomplished during his time, I guess, in the House of Representatives as well as in the Senate, and then we were also having conversation about former President Obama. So I do want to talk about those things, but when you called in, I was talking about this headline that came out from Menendez. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, I saw it. I saw it.
So, I mean, am I accurate in what I'm saying? Which is that what he wants to do, because they don't have a clear front runner to attach themselves to down ballot in order to ride the coattails to victory, that they still want to keep the bracketing, but they don't want to bracket with an unknown entity at the presidential candidate level.
Yeah, I mean, look, the whole problem with New Jersey's system, and I've been an opponent of the line since I can remember, and it started, selfishly. It started with my dad being thrown off the line 3 times and beating the line 3 times, the only candidate in the state of New Jersey to have done that. But I saw how ridiculous it was when I used to be part of a group called Reform Newark, working with the Civic Citizens Army. We were talking about changing politics. And if you read the bylaws of the Essex County Democratic Committee, there's a requirement in the bylaws to have conventions to decide who's going to have, quote unquote, the line. Can you tell me the last time that's happened in Essex County?
You know what? I did not know that.
Yeah. Now it may have changed in the last 10 years, but 10 years ago it certainly had that provision in there. It wasn't a choice. It was mandated. So what you have are political institutions, and I don't leave the Republicans off on this, because in counties where the Republican Party dominates, they have the line issue there too. So it's not a person. It's not a person, a party. It's both parties. It's where they predominate. So they want their cake and eat it too. So they want open primaries when it benefits them. They want closed primaries when it benefits them. At the end of the day, what New Jersey has, and I've said it all along, it takes you getting out of New Jersey and being involved politically in other states. Other states do not have this system. It's Byzantine. It's old. How are you going to have a primary and decide who your choice is going to be before the primary voters get to tell you who your choice is going to be? I mean, that's the lunacy of having a party pick who their candidate is going to be. You're telling the voters, we're selecting for you before you even cast a ballot. That candidate advantages that any challenger will never have. And so they're basically telling you how the election is going to be, how they're going to run it, and you have to just accept it. But that's why nobody beats the line, or it wins 97% of the time, because it's not just getting that preferential location on the ballot, it's the resources. It's the district leaders. When I ran for Congress, the mayors and the council people and the elected officials who supported me, when I lost, they got reprimanded. How dare you support somebody who wasn't who the party picked? How dare you support somebody because you like them? The unions that supported me, they got reprimanded because they're like, how dare you support somebody that we didn't tell you to pick? That's anti-democratic. On its face, it's anti-democratic. And so when I hear Bob Menendez talk what he's talking, I'm not surprised. They want that cake and eat it too.
That is, when I saw it, man, I almost fell out of my chair. So listen, I just brought another caller in, but Eric, I'm going to ask you to hold for a second. So on to this presidential election. You and I have spent some time in some threads going back and forth regarding what's going on. Firstly, what are your thoughts about the debate the other night and Mike Bloomberg?
I think Mike Bloomberg. First of all, when I heard he was going to be on the stage on Wednesday for the debate, I said this is troublesome. Mike ain't debated politically in 9 years, right? And when you're in a political debate, you got to practice. I mean, especially if you were somebody who did it and then went away for a long time. It's not something that you can just jump into and say, I'm just going to answer the questions. It takes a lot of preparation, and he was not prepared. And Elizabeth Warren was. And she knows that he's standing in her way to get back to where she needs to get back to be competitive, because she's zeroed right in on it. And she took him where she needed to take him. I mean, and the rest of them just piled on, like, oh, me too, I got my lines too. And Bloomberg has been who Bloomberg has been, and that is when he's not the chief executive, like in New York City, when he's not the guy in charge, and it stands sort of, shoulder to shoulder with other candidates, he didn't perform well at all. I thought Warren did things the best. I think Sanders more than held his own. I think Biden even did it better, because all the venom was thrown at Bloomberg, so it kept the fire off of him. And I think the rest were, he's going to be who Pete is, Amy's going to be who Amy is. I think your top two can take folks are still going to top three. I think, unfortunately, even with the bad performance, it's still going to be Sanders 1 and Biden and Bloomberg fighting for number 2. So I think Elizabeth Warren really doesn't have any place to go.
So when you look at, because you're well aware of Mike Bloomberg's record, 12 years as mayor of New York, and even prior to that, his record in terms of his involvement with the Republican Party and supporting Rudy Giuliani, supporting John McCain, supporting a lot of things that the Democratic Party is ideologically opposed to. And so when we say that Mike Bloomberg has a pulse, the only reason he has a pulse is because there is a belief that most loyal voting bloc of the Democratic Party can be swayed to vote for him in this election. And so when you look at that and you see the number of black elected officials and black prominent figures who have been exalted because there are folks in their communities who believed that they cared about them, that they had their best interests at heart, to watch these folks come out now in support of Mike Bloomberg, and then the headline that came out that said he's paying $2,500 a person for people to say kind words about him. What does that make? I mean, how do you feel about that, Councilman?
Wait, you're telling me that black elected officials are transactional? I didn't. That's news to me. Really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Come on, man. This is.
But we've always known it happens, right? And we've talked about it. And I tell people, they don't believe me, but I literally, because of who my dad was, I was in rooms where there were pastors who actually asked for cash, right? And other elected officials who asked for cash. I was in those rooms. But they've always been able to conceal it, right? To give this air of doubt that it really happens. But now it's just, the veil is off.
Yeah. I would even say this. Can you hear me, Eric? I'm sorry.
No, I got you.
Yeah. I know an elected official that we all know, Southern Revere, who had a badge man. Who, when I was county coordinator for the Florio re-election campaign in 1993, who came to our headquarters and got his check for miscellaneous campaign things, right? And when he, we were talking about how the results were coming in, we were losing to Whitman. The person said to me, "Well, that's nice and all. Do you have something for my guy?" And I said, "Oh yeah, he was more concerned about the check than he was about the results of the governor. So, and his excuse was, when he saw my face, was, "Hey, Ron, the white guys do it too.
Yeah.
We're just getting what the white guys get, right?" So it's just like, hey, however you justify it. the problem in politics now is the same thing that infested the Republican Party is coming home to roost in the Democratic Party. So I'm not surprised that Bloomberg is taking root no more than I was midway in 2016 when I saw Trump taking root. People are willing to sacrifice principle, ideas, ideology, to get with who they think can win, or to get paid along the process. And it's made our politics. That's how cynical the community, the country is right now. And there's some real, on all sides of this debate right now, people who are really corporate, people who are really revolutionary, people who are sort of in the middle, all over the place. I've never seen the politics nationally be this divided in this extreme kind of way.
Yeah. So we just got a caller. Eric, I'm going to ask you to keep holding, but the caller who just called, go ahead.
Yep. Hey, Eric, how you doing? This is Farrakhan. I was calling so early. I didn't want to mess up the flow. I was trying to catch you earlier to speak about Mike Bloomberg. Did you happen to hear his latest radio ad commercial? I heard it today for the first time. I don't get to really listen to commercial radio too much. I listen to satellite. And today he is running a commercial about the black wealth gap in America. And he is saying that he wants to get, his intention as president would be to get in this advertisement, he says 1 million black families to becoming homeowners. He wanted to triple the wealth of black America in 10 years. And what was the other number? I think it was double the amount of black businesses, or vice versa, triple the wealth and double the amount of black. And I just was like, this is an amazing commercial load of crop. And I was just like, is he really running this? And he was running this on Hot 97. So when you guys are talking about Bloomberg and what he's doing, like, he's got the money, right, to run these ads. And I'm like, oh my God, like, did this man just say he's going to triple the wealth of black America in 10 years by some policy he calls us the Green Book method? Right? I think it was the Green Book or Greenwood method. It was just, you got to hear this commercial if you haven't heard it. It's just outrageous. He's about to, what he's got black people, or what he's attempting to make black people think he's going to do for them is, I've never heard anybody talk like this. It's just amazing to hear this load of bull. Yeah. That's all I call about. If you haven't heard the commercial, you got to hear it.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thank you. So, Ron, when you listen to that, right, it to me, it is just the turkey giveaways, the chicken sandwich giveaways on steroids, right? But black elected officials have primed the black voter for a day like this by not engaging them on the merits of policy, engaging them on the merits of acumen, but engaging them on what I can give you in the short term. And so whether Mike Bloomberg can actually fulfill that promise or those promises that he made, you have, which is undeniable, you have 99% of Americans who are now looking at this top 1% and saying, oh my God, look at this. So you talked about the divide. This is the divide. And they're looking and saying, these folks are working to try to get more and to give us less, right? Through policies. And so Mike Bloomberg says, you know what, you guys are in pain? Then I got the ultimate prescription for you. I got the ultimate feel good for you. And so now he floats this out there. What do you think about that?
Well, his disrespect is colossal in the sense that now you think that, like, black people can't even Google his record as mayor of New York. I mean, my thing is, if you're going to do all this stuff as president, but I see nothing in your past record as an executive of the largest city in America, whether you made that true, why would I believe you could do it on the national level, but you couldn't do it on the city level? Or you didn't even advocate for that at the state level. Let's say you couldn't do it because you didn't have the votes in the city council. When did he ever advocate doing that in New York City? When did he ever push that as part of his policy prescription? Now, when did he ever, take his money and create a fund that would do that. I mean, that's just so incredulous here. It's like, you know, we now accept people who can just remake themselves into whatever they think at the moment we're looking for if we get our vote. And it does. Donald Trump can go from being a guy who hung out with hip-hop moguls, a guy who was for choice for women, who was against the death penalty, who had never been to a church in his life and didn't want to be, that thought that the religious right were a bunch of wackos, because we have all that on record, and remade himself into what he knew would get him the nomination, and what he knows, and the course he's following now is he's just doing stuff that he knows will set him up in the best light to get reelected. But that's the world we're in. I'm not blaming solely Donald Trump for kind of in that cult of personality that Living Color sang about years ago. We're living that world right now. And so Mike Bloomberg, I ain't mad at Mike Bloomberg. Mike Bloomberg is like, if this is going to work, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, he wants to win. He's doing what he thinks he's going to win.
When you say don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
Basically, I mean, Mike is like, I see the game. Donald Trump saw the game. Yeah. Right? Donald Trump saw the game in 16 and said, look, Twitter is the way to do it. I'm going to give my opponents nicknames that's going to stick, right? He is dumbed down. People say that Donald Trump dumbed down the electorate. The electorate was already dumbed down. He just actually seized and started jugging with it in ways that we folks who are highbrow and want to respect voters more wouldn't dare do. He said, I'm going to do it.
And now, would you say,
y'all talk about this.
So, Ron, would you say, because I agree with you, man, I agree with you 100%. So when we say that the electorate is dumbed down, and you're a big proponent of civics, right? That we need to have civics. And so at the local level, right, at the grassroots level is where that corrosion began and dumbing down, right? So at our district leader level, they dumb you down. At the municipal level, they dumb you down. At the county level, they dumb you down. And at the state level, they dumb you down. So by the time you get to a presidential candidate, you're already so dumbed down that the strategy to win becomes prescriptions like Donald Trump had, or prescriptions like Mike Bloomberg is proposing, right? Which is just ridiculous. But you're now in a state of mind, and it is because of your local elected politicians that your neighbors are in such a state of mind that they actually believe this stuff.
Yeah, look, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local, and you're exactly right. So at the end of the day, the model you have for if you're an average voter, it doesn't mean you're dumb, doesn't mean you're stupid. It means this is what you're used to, right, as your politics. And you may be a very conspicuous voter. You may be somebody who looks at the candidates that takes the time to do it, but your prism of understanding is framed by the reality you live every day and the politicians that are closest to you. And so if you don't understand what a councilman does, or what a mayor does, or what their responsibilities are, or what a district leader does, county committee person, or if you don't understand what a freeholder does, if you don't understand, what the school board does, if you don't understand contracts and how that flows and how vendors get picked, if you don't understand something called no contest contracts, right? If you don't understand those basic things, you're not going to be able to analyze things at the national level beyond the rah-rah and the rhetoric, because that's the way you've been conditioned. We've been conditioned, and this is not just a black thing. This is, you can go down to the South, and again, you go into Republican communities that are poor and rural, and, I always say the poor whites in the South and whatnot, those are Democratic voters, but they don't know that. Howard Dean said they've been fed a constant diet of God, gays, and guns so much that they vote for the candidate who's depriving them of good education options, who's depriving them of water, who's depriving them of roads, because as long as he feeds them God, guns, and gays, that's all that they've been taught in their prism to evaluate their elected officials from. And they live in Mississippi in horrible places. It's the same thing in our communities as well. The cult of personality is strong and getting stronger, and those who are most cynical and those who wield the most power in our communities, who don't live in our communities, are wielding it for their good and for their benefit at our expense.
Call it go.
Hey, Eric. Hey, Councilman. This is Sydney. How you guys doing there?
Hey, man.
Hey, listen, I look at these cats all like Jim Jones, right? They're all Jim Jones. You get a whole bunch of people together that feed you a bunch of poison. And here's the thing here that, black folks, one of the things, really major things that we need to really realize, and Congressman, you hit on it just a few seconds ago. Where was all these policies? Where were all these plans? Where were all these things and these good pictures they drew up before they ran for president? Where was all this stuff at? Like, how come you weren't doing this already? Why are you on the big stage telling people something that you're not going to do? But if you were going to do it, how come it wasn't your makeup from the beginning? And this is the question that the people should be trying to find out. Like, where's that candidate that can show you your lineage, right? These Bloomberg and the rest of them, they're going to black churches. They're giving you all these promises. They're telling you what they're going to do. But where was that without you being a candidate for running for president? Where was it? And I think that the people really need to get into asking those questions to all of them. Like, where was it? Like, if you look at what Eric's doing, Eric is here. Eric is local. Yourself, everybody, you can look at your track record even before you said you were going to do it. But these folks, Bloomberg, what has he done for the black community without being a candidate? So that's what I ask.
Well, but again, so here lies my issue, Sydney, is that the folks who are caping for Mike Bloomberg now, and I'm talking about elected officials. So I'm very disappointed in former Mayor Nutter down in Philly. He knows very clearly, being a former mayor of a city like Philadelphia, he knows the issues that are impacting those folks. And for him to know the track record of a Mike Bloomberg and the fact that, under his reign, more than 5 million black folk were thrown up against walls in this stop and frisk. And for him not to come out and publicly say, listen, before I even endorse you, I want to have some transparency here. I want you to sit and answer some hard questions. Now, we heard those questions asked during the debate, right? But none of the folks who are making excuses to part of dumbing down the electorate, right? And so now when he comes out and says, well, I endorse him, he expects that endorsement to carry some weight in that, in the arena where he dumbed down the electorate. I mean, so it's insidious the way that they do this, and that's why I have such disdain for them, because they know. But again, Uncle Mike, he's got a lot of money. He spent almost $500 million so far in advertising. He spent $300 million writing a check to the DNC before he entered into the race. He got them to change the rules so he could be on the debate stage. He said, and he's making no bones about it. I mean, he's literally paying online influencers to say nice stuff about him. I got tagged in a thread the other day by a person, and I went to go look at their profile. This is obviously a person who is being paid. And you know what it reminded me of, Sydney and Councilman? It reminded me of when Corey was mayor in Newark. And Councilman, you'll remember this. There was a website called Glocally Newark. And Glocally Newark was a site that was put together, a blog site that was put together by Corey. And it had paid bloggers who were paid to write nice things about Newark. And I would sit there and I watch, I go, oh, this is horrible. And you could see that it was not authentic at all. It didn't last long because Newarkers were saying, wait a minute, who are these people? This is not the Newark that I see. Now, if you were having an honest conversation about, we got garbage over here, we got this over here, but hey, they're trying to build this thing over here, that'd be one thing. But when the site was literally 100% about how beautiful Newark is and the streets are glistening, and people said, no, something's wrong with that. And that's exactly what's happening right now with Mike Bloomberg and a guy like Nutter and pastors all across this country and elected officials, black elected officials all across this country know it. And they're allowing it to happen, and that concerns me. And so to your statement, Sydney, if you know that this guy hasn't had this body of work, what is it that makes you believe that he's going to do it now? And so if the only thing that we're saying is that we got to stop Trump, but we understand that Trump is a manifestation of a system that existed before, then I say, well, is Bloomberg any better if we look at what his past history was? I don't know.
You know, Eric, my question, I always ask people, why do we have to stop Trump? I always ask people that. Why do we have to stop?
We have Councilman Rice on the line, and I want to ask you, Councilman, because, listen, if there's a policy guy out there that I need to talk to about some stuff, Councilman Ron C. Rice is the guy. And so I want to ask you, why is that the imperative for the black community in particular?
I think it's the damage that I'm not even talking about the crazy stuff that Trump says, right? That's just part of the course. You know, he's an embarrassment to our nation. He represents our nation to the world. He's an embarrassment. But I'm not even going with the faux pas and the things that he said. If you look at policy wise in terms of the courts, if Trump is reelected, the hold on the courts with some of the and we're not talking just conservative jurists. We're talking about really, really right wing jurists. Some in their 30s and their 40s, which means they're going to be on the court for 25, 35 years. If he gets reelected, he will have transformed the entire judicial system at the federal level, and we won't recover from that for 25 years. You can put in another president 4 years after him, and the kind of decisions that are going to come down from the federal courts that disproportionately are going to affect us are going to be disastrous. You're going to have a court that's going to look like the 1950s. So that's the one thing. Internationally, you're talking about a guy who doesn't understand how China is playing a role internationally and in our country. China owns most of the debt that we owe in America, and people like Trump are very kind of happy with that and happy to have that kind of continue. So you have that, right? And economically, this thing is going to bust. I mean, the economy is hot now, but this stuff is cyclical, right? And it's so hot right now that it's going to cool down. And under another Trump administration, he's talking about another round of tax cuts for the wealthy, right? That's going to make the economy that fell apart in 2007 and 2008, the created that the valley that Obama had to bring us out of, is going to be deeper. There are people right now predicting depression eras type dips in the economy in the next 2 years because of the policies of this president who just wants to keep cooking the economy that can't keep cooking. So that's just a few things. I mean, there's a litany of other things that are going wrong. But that even a moderate Democrat could stem if they got in office, and a more revolutionary Democrat would just completely turn around. But those are just a couple of the highlights, and those things would be disastrous for an economy, be disastrous for black people. Because when America has a cold, black America has the flu.
No, we have the coronavirus. We have the coronavirus.
Right.
So now, this is a perfect segue. So I know that you had a limited amount of time to spend with us, so I'm not going to unpack and give my thoughts about stopping Trump or not. But when you now look at the field of candidates, the very first thing that the Democratic Party said when they produced Biden is they said, hey, listen, Democrats, all Democrats, we have to vote for the person who is most electable, right? That was a criteria that they wanted everybody to look at when selecting a candidate. So as we're looking now, Biden doesn't seem to be the most electable anymore. I don't know that he ever was. You and I know how polls can be cooked and how you have to look within the tabs to really glean the actual information. So when you look at the candidates, Councilman, who do you see as being the one who can most compete with Trump? Two, who will provide some remedy for the flu or coronavirus that you say the black community has because America has a cold?
Wow. So I disagree. I don't think Biden is done yet. I think Biden has one last shot to get back in South Carolina. I think he has to win South Carolina, and I think he has to win it in a way that his campaign said that they were going to win it, with black votes, with rural whites, and so that older demographic of moderate voters. He's going to have to beat Sanders and Buttigieg and Warren like handily there. And then I think his pathway is to try to win a third of Super Tuesday to get past that, to be in the race. But obviously the front runner, whether you like it or not, is Bernie Sanders. I mean, Bernie Sanders is, and I'm not, people want to say, well, he won the 2 white states. It's not just the white states. It's the fact that he's kept an army together. He continues to raise money. He's been unadulterated, and he's just kind of going forward. And there's no bumps in the road for him right now. And I think that's going to continue. The question is who's going to challenge him. And so I think Biden still has a shot. I think Warren is done after Nevada. I just don't know where she gets enough money to compete on a real level any longer. I think Amy Klobuchar is done after Nevada. I think Pete Buttigieg gets to South Carolina and drops out. Maybe he has enough. I just don't get Pete Buttigieg. I don't know how a mayor of a white town of 100,000 people gets to run for president. I was the councilman of a ward that had 70,000 people, and I'll put my record of accomplishment against his any day of the week.
Yeah.
And I ain't cool enough to run for president. Okay, so.
Well, we understand what that's about, though.
That's the prototype of white privilege right there.
Well, that's exactly what it is, right? It's them looking to install their next piece on the chessboard. That's what it was about. So they knew he wasn't going to win the presidency, but they knew they needed to get him national accreditation, right? They needed to get him exposure. And so now people say, oh, I like this guy. So now wherever they look to install him to manage some policies that continue to transfer wealth to white folk, right? That's what you look forward to happening.
Yeah.
So now, so Mike Bloomberg, and I don't know whether it was intentionally leaked or not, but something came out of his campaign which essentially said to everybody, hey, listen, Bernie Sanders is very close to an insurmountable lead with delegates, and so we need to consolidate. You all need to drop out and support me. That's what he said. So do you see, especially after how Elizabeth Warren eviscerated him, right?
Yeah.
Do you see her when she drops out supporting Bloomberg?
No, I think Warren has no choice but to support Bernie. I mean, they were talking before the race began. Oh, don't forget, people forget, in 2016. Bernie talked to Elizabeth Warren about running.
Right.
I mean, the one thing, listen, I have a lot of disagreements and with Bernie Sanders. I don't agree with him on some of these policy issues, but I will tell you this, and this is my disclaimer. If he's the nominee in my party, I'm doing everything I can to get that man elected. I don't care if I disagree with him on 20% of stuff. I agree with him on 80% of stuff. That's enough for me. But what people understand is that Sanders came to this in 2016 sort of like looking for a candidate to run. He was like, I'm a little too old. I may be a bit of a backbencher. I'm looking for a candidate to somebody got to challenge Hillary Clinton. In the same way that I remember Raz Araga saying he didn't care what Cory Booker was going to do in 2014, he was going to run, but somebody got to stand up for Cory Booker. That's what he said. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's out of turn here. He was like, somebody got to run against him, and I'll do it if nobody else does it. So Bernie was looking for a candidate. He went to Elizabeth Warren, said, please run. She said, no. He said, okay, if nobody wants to run, I'll run. I have no problem. I'll do it. And he got the support that he got. So I see them as being colleagues, even if they disagree, but he's going to do something. But here's the Bloomberg play. The Bloomberg play is that the moderates, if Biden doesn't win South Carolina and get back in this race, where do the moderates go, right? He becomes just the recipient because he's going to be the only one left. And his argument is going to be, I got the money to self-finance, so any money the DNC raises you can use to try to take the Senate and keep the House, which means the DNC is going to love him. That puts him in play to get superdelegate votes, right? The more money he's putting into these black folk, the more of them are going to come over. The moderates, at least in the CBC, majority, I think, will endorse him if Biden falters. And so that's your old guard, folks. I think the squad, obviously, we know where they are at, and the younger members will probably go. But if Biden falls, this becomes a Sanders-Bloomberg race. And
now,
that's going to be interesting.
Because now in 2016, 1.4 million black folks stayed home. They didn't buy what the establishment was selling. Do you think that the establishment has done a good enough job at tainting Donald Trump, right? At making this about stopping Trump as opposed to looking out? Because I think in 2016, folks were looking out for their own interests, and they said, she's not gonna address my interests, right? And so they stayed home. Now what the establishment has to do now is they have to get people to abandon their personal interests for something different. And so do you think that that 1.4 million folks who stayed home, do you think they've done an adequate enough job at convincing them that putting their interests on hold, their specific interests on hold, is more important, or stopping Donald Trump rather is more important than their interests, and they should put their interests on hold?
I don't know yet. I think it's too early to tell, honestly. I mean, I still think there's time for that to coalesce. But here's the other sort of thing in the room. Donald Trump is not giving up on getting the black vote he needs to throw this whole thing into disarray. See, as the Democrats have to get a certain amount of turnout of us, Donald Trump has to get a certain amount of us too to vote for him and to stay at home, right? And so if you looked at the State of the Union address, that whole address was to black people. If you look at the nuts and bolts of it, it was to black people. And what was he hitting? He was hitting on the issues that the Democratic Party has not played well on. He talked about school choice. Now, I know people have different opinions about this, but school choice, whether you believe in public school choice, which I believe in, or whether you believe in private school choice, which I don't believe in, but it polls in the 70 to 80% of approval with black and Latino folks. And the Democratic Party, that used to be bipartisan and embracing that issue, has said, we don't support that anymore. So now you're telling 70, 80% of your base you don't support their choices for education for their kids. I don't care what the teachers union say. God bless them. But that's the reality of the polling for the last 5 years. He talked about jobs and creation. He talked about the criminal justice reform. Who was talking about criminal justice reform in the DNC right now? Is anybody? Now that Corey's out, now that Cowell's out, is anybody talking about that? He's talking about it. Now, I know he doesn't have any kind of real, ability to talk about it with authority, but he's positioning himself to get a certain amount. He doesn't have to get a lot, a certain amount of black votes, and then to turn off enough black folks to say, I ain't voting in this election. That's what you have to look forward to. The DNC has work to do, but Donald Trump is like, I only need about 8%. And I'm going to get my 8% and make the rest of you Negroes stay home.
And so
and
now,
then I win.
That's very interesting, right? So now, and I find this, so just not too many weeks ago, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. We're in the middle of, or toward the end now, of Black History Month. Dr. King said that that we had no time to wait for moderates, right? That the issue facing not just Black Americans, but poor people as a whole was critical. And so do you think that Black folk are going to be pragmatic in this election and say, who's doing something for, finally saying, who's doing something for me? I've always said that we should not align ourselves with Democratic Party, Republican Party. We should align ourselves with whoever's going to work toward our interests. And our interests ought to be financial and economic and political power. That's it, right? So whoever is helping us negotiate for that is where we ought to be. And so if Donald Trump is helping, or perception or reality, and folks see that they should be gravitating there. If somebody from the Democratic Party is talking about that, then folks should be gravitating there. So along with those who may just look and say, you know what, I'm burnt out. I'm going to stay home. Do you think that there's going to be a large percentage of black folks who are going to be more pragmatic in this election?
I think younger folks will be in our community will be a lot more pragmatic in the sense of, well, pragmatic I think is in the eye of the beholder, right? So I think younger people are more engaged and will be more engaged with sort of a revolution of values, a revolution of politics and government and how we do things, right? But I think the older generation of black folks are going to look at pragmatism and how we get things done, for lack of a better term. Getting half a loaf or 70% of a loaf is better than no loaf. And so the issue, the problem is, and I've always said this too, the millennials talk a good talk, but they don't vote. And I like to believe that young people, vote, and people keep telling me this election is going to be different. And I'm like, okay, I don't see anything that tells me they will. I still think older black people are going to be the ones who decide the election when they come out and vote. I think younger black folks love to rally, love to be on social media, love to talk about issues and march and do those kind of things. They don't show up at the ballot box, and that's just the reality. There was a little uptick when Obama won in 2008, and even that was gone by 2012. So I just think that there's still that division in our community. But I always call myself a pragmatist progressive. I just believe I'm for progressive ideas, but I'm also for what I know can get passed. And that means, I might have to water down some things to get some things done and then come back to it. If I get 50% or 60%, I can come back next legislative session and get another 20%. And I believe we build that way. I don't know if everybody feels that way. I think people either throw that or con that, like 50-50. But that's the way I've always operated. That's the way I believe most people in the country. At least that's my opinion. I don't have any anecdotal evidence of that. That's my opinion about how people think that the government should operate.
Right. Well, that's what AOC seemed to hint at too, right? Well, I think I had two callers on the phone. Do I? I know Eric may still be on the phone.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Darren. How y'all doing?
Darren Martin, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Hey, listen. Hey, what's up, Brother Rice? Hey, Brother Eric. Great conversation. Listen, here's what I'm watching. Biden had I think a 30-point lead in South Carolina, and Sanders have chewed into that. I'm also watching where Bloomberg, not a stupid guy as we know, he's now putting out the platform of giving more money to HBCUs, increasing home ownership for minorities and blacks, etc. But the big fish in the room is, and I want to hear you guys on this, and not many people are talking about it. My mind has been going to, and I was telling my wife this morning, who will be the VP pick? Because you got a whole bunch of people up there that's in their 70s, and we need a younger VP pick just in case something goes on. So I want to know what you guys feel about that.
Well, I want you to answer that question, Councilman, but I want to say this before you do. Regarding South Carolina, if you go back probably 2 months ago in the show, I was saying to Kevin, I said, Kevin, listen, I said, Iowa and New Hampshire are going to be critical for Bernie Sanders in order to start to sway those votes in South Carolina. I said, if you remember in 2016, and Ron, I'm not 2016, 2008, 2007, Hillary Clinton was up in South Carolina. It wasn't until Obama performed in those early states that those black folks in South Carolina said, oh, he can win. And so the idea was to create the momentum that gave those folks the belief that this candidate could win, which is why I believe there was such a debacle in Iowa, because to give him that bump, had they reported that information the way that they should have, I think he would have rode into New Hampshire with bigger numbers coming out of there. We already see the momentum he has in Nevada, right? He's ahead in the next two, in a couple other states now, and like you said, There's no bump in the road for him right now. And Darren, you just said he's eaten into that lead in South Carolina, which is why, again, I think that memo leaked out from Bloomberg's campaign to say, listen, guys, it's going to be insurmountable at some point. You need to drop out. But who do you think is who would you look at, Councilman, as VP picks, no matter who the nominee is?
I think it's a mix. I think if Sanders is the nominee, he's going to have to get a moderate guy or gal. I don't mean somebody like really moderate, but somebody who they think can carry on the gist of what he wants to do. If he's only a one-termer, but somebody who the DNC likes, so that they can get the army behind him. That they can do. So who does that look like? It looks like a Stacey Abrams. I know this won't be popular here. It looks like a Cory Booker. It looks like an Amy Klobuchar on some level because she's Midwest and kind of moderate, and she's a woman. I think if it's a Bloomberg or Biden, I think Biden has to bring somebody from the far left. So the question is, will a Warren run with a Biden? I don't know, but that will be a consideration. I think you'd have to look at somebody like Kamala to also be there. I think the old ways of looking at stuff are different. Geography is no longer the consideration. It's really who fits you ideologically and balances you out. So it doesn't matter that Cory Booker or Kamala or Amy come from Democratic states. It's really about their ideological purity and whether a Sanders or Biden people will actually accept this person being a little bit different to the left and to the right of who they want, but they have the confidence that they will be a good lieutenant. In the same way that Obama picked Biden. I mean, Obama didn't pick Biden because he liked him. He picked him because he had a problem with Midwest white folks, working class white folks, who Hillary Clinton beat the socks off of him with in the primaries. Joe fit that perfectly, and so that's what they're going to be looking for. Like, what are my Achilles heels, and who helps best to fix that for me going forward? Because we're going to have a united party, and we're going to beat Trump, to even have a chance to beat Trump.
So now, again,
I got one.
Go ahead.
I got one final question. Now, I'm noticing that more and more people are finally going to the dictionary and finding out what socialism is, and now they're figuring out that it's Medicaid, it's Medicare, it's Social Security. We have it here already. Now, my question to you guys is this. Because I'm hearing from all my friends, all my political friends are saying that Obama is going to come out at some point and support Biden if he's dead. Why hasn't Obama endorsed Biden, in your opinion?
Do you want to take that one first? So look, I think
I'll let you take it, man.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that Obama. This is my belief. I think that Obama probably didn't want Biden to run. Some other people wanted Biden to run. And so Obama just kind of let it happen and said, look, I'm not coming out for him because I didn't want him to run. But if he shows some potential, then maybe I'll do that. But I'm not going to put my neck out there. What we did see, Darren, is we saw Obama come out for Bloomberg, right? Make no mistake, those commercials that are airing, Obama gave his permission to air those. They wouldn't be airing if Obama didn't give his permission. So I think that he's indicated, right? He's given a soft wink or a heavy nod about who he believes has the better chance to beat Bernie in the primary. So I don't think that I don't think he's going to come out. I agree with you in looking at the numbers in South Carolina. I think that there is a civil war at the dinner table, in the dining room table, in the black community between the younger black folk and their parents and grandparents. I think that the younger black folks are not realizing the dream, right, of prosperity. They're doing worse off. They're the first generation to do worse off than their parents did. And so when they're sleeping on the couch, so their parents are saying, "Hey, hold on, just hold on one more again," and they're saying, "Ma, Dad, Grandma, I'm on your couch. I went off to college. I did all this stuff. I'm straddled with the student loan debt, like they said. I got this, like they said. This is bad for me, like they said." And the only person who's speaking to me is this guy over here and those group of people. So I think that Biden's going to be done in South Carolina. I think that the younger people, I think that they're going to come out. They came out in record numbers in Iowa and New Hampshire. I think they're going to come out in record numbers in South Carolina too.
I'll believe it when I see it. The key for me is again, look, the 68. I always think Bobby Kennedy movement, if he had lived, would have resembled this a little bit. Because you saw the hippie generation, you saw the Panthers, you saw a coalition being built on the left that was really ready to coalesce around Bobby Kennedy. We could talk about the realness of it because he was a cult of personality because he was a Kennedy, but Bobby Kennedy was a different guy after John got killed. And so you saw that kind of, so people always dreamed about what that coalition would look like if it ever manifested itself. I mean, Sanders could be that guy, but I just for me, I want young people to prove me wrong. Like, I want to believe again. You know what I mean? I want to believe again. I don't want to be cynical. I want to believe that a new world is possible, right? And I want to believe that. I just need to see signs of it. I hear talk about the young people coming out. I hear talk about millennials. I'm waiting for them to show and prove. If they show and prove, I'm old enough to say, you know what? I'll get behind what the young folks want in this country, even against some of the misgivings I may have, and I'll support that. I mean, I was the same way when I saw Obama in 2008. I saw something different that was different than Clinton. I was tired of the machine telling me who to support, and I was like, I'm gonna put my faith in somebody else, somebody that's not cut from where you guys want it to be cut. So
you were first out here to endorse him.
What's that?
I said you were first out here to endorse Obama.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Because I want to believe that. So I'm hoping somebody young will convince this old guy here who was young in 2008 that they'll do that for me like I did it for a lot of other people.
So would you say the Killer Mike video, and I play it often on this show, the commercial where he talks about what inspires him to be in support of Bernie Sanders. He says that for all intents and purposes, Bernie Sanders is the embodiment of the movement that Dr. King was pushing for and was ultimately murdered for. Do you believe that?
I think it could be possible. Again, I think again, if you look at the Bobby Kennedy thing, Bobby Kennedy started building it. It wasn't necessarily apparent initially, even though he was talking that, he was advocating it. It wasn't initially apparent. I think Bernie Sanders is saying the right thing about what a revolution would look like, a complete break from the past. I just don't know if beyond the zealous folks that are behind them, who are a lot of my progressive friends, they're like, "Ron, you should be with us." I don't know if it's enough nationally to win an election against Trump. I don't know if it can win, but I'm also not convinced at this point whether it might be the only way we can win. I think time will tell in the next 2 months.
Now here's the other thing, because we were talking about vice president, and you listed a whole bunch of people, and it didn't seem as though race was an issue. You were mentioning Amy, or that it could be Corey, or it could be Kamala, but when you now look and say, because everything right now for the establishment is hinging on what happens in South Carolina, whether or not that block of black folks are going to come out and what they're going to do. How much attention needs to be paid to that block of voters when it comes to picking a vice president? presidential candidate.
Wow. That's interesting.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because it seems like already, right? So that we're already taking for granted that, you know, we're gonna count on you for this part of the race. But once we get that, then in terms of how we determine who to pick our vice president, you'll be a non-factor at that point. And I just keep hearing Representative Ayanna Pressley saying, no more black faces without black voices. No more black faces without black voices. And so we have to, and so even if, whoever these black electeds and black self-appointed leaders in the community, and I'm using my air quotes, I mean, at some point you gotta get up off your knees. At some point you gotta straighten your back. We have to have more. We have to be more than just tokens in this. We have to be more than just useless pawns in this effort. And that's why I'm trying to hone people in on, if the decisions that are being made are not decisions that are advancing what I think is our only agenda, which is seizing economic and political power. And I think that they're having the courage, right? Because we know that we're not going to have a black president, right? But having the courage to say, look, in order to resolve these issues that we have all, whether in earnestness or just out of pandering, talked about during this primary cycle, and I'm talking about the condition of black folks, the inequalities, the injustices, all of those things. The only way to deal with those things is through policy, and you have to have the courage to elect and appoint people in positions of authority to be able to bring about the policy shifts.
Now, Eric, you're right. You're right, but the problem is, and your question is good, but it's a loaded question, and I'll tell you why. And it's something we talk about on the show often. Because black people operate from a standpoint of emotionalism, that makes the question so loaded, because whoever makes us feel good, for the most part, is who people sway to. And, look at the economic and political power. We lose our minds when people make us emotional, and that's what's scary about us. That's scary. It makes us a very unpredictable people.
Right, but this is where Darren, I go back to, so full circle. Let's come back to the article with Menendez, right? So here's where we should want our electeds to lean into the fight, right? And to gather us together and say, okay, let's huddle up. Here are our issues. Here are issues in New Jersey. And then you have all of the mayors say, here are our specific issues. So Raz Baraka says, here are the issues in Newark. Ted Green, here are the issues in East Orange. Tony Voss, here are the issues in Irvington. Dwayne Warren, here are the issues in Orange. And then Jersey City, all of them, right? And say, here are our issues. Now, instead of us running away from it, and instead of us saying, you know what, we don't want to be associated with this fight that's going on, right? We just want to protect ourselves. We want to make sure that we can secure another term for ourselves so that we can pad our pensions and, continue to, live, as my friend Shep says, deliciously off of your misery. That we're going to lean into this fight, right? And we're going to try to seize economic and political power. We're going to talk based on what you all have said to us about being issues in your community. This is where we believe the fight is, and this is the person or people who we believe we need to be behind. And that's why, when Councilman Rice did that in 2008, I mean, I can't tell you, I already admired him, but how much more I admired him for doing that, because he leaned into it just like that.
Well, the great thing about Councilman Rice, he was never a follower. He was always a leader. It was never a situation where he waited to see which way this group or that group or this person. He was always a forward thinker. So that's why I
wasn't shocked when he did it, since I was living in a ward at that time. And so I knew. I mean, this guy was always forward thinking from everything I saw about him. So it didn't surprise me.
I think I have another caller on. Do I have another caller on the line? Caller?
You still got Sydney holding on. That's it.
Oh, okay. And Eric, did you hang up? Oh, Eric Dixon must have hung up. Call back, Eric. So,
I ain't no Brother Sid was on. What's up, Brother Sid?
Hey, man. So, what else is in the news? There were a couple other things that I wanted to talk about, but those are the biggest things. I don't know if I still have Councilman Rice on the line, or I know he said he had a half an hour to give me, so he may have.
Yeah, I'm still on.
Okay, so because the reason one of the reasons I asked you to call, and this is how I primed the audience in the beginning, when we look at a Bernie Sanders. And the argument comes up that he hasn't accomplished much as didn't accomplish much as a congressman, didn't accomplish much as a U.S. senator. If I were to say to you, he's in a hostile environment, one that is plagued by a multitude of lobbyists that outnumber the actual representatives in the House, that because of their financial influence are actually writing the policies that our representatives go to the floor and vote for. And so if you're in that kind of an environment, it's difficult to negotiate, because what you want to do is firstly be an antibody to that sick environment and try to destroy it. So
that's true, but I think the issue for me, Eric, has always been is it's going to take time to do that. It wasn't built overnight, and it's not going to be taken apart overnight. And a lot of what happens in D.C., because I'm in it every day, it's relationships. Whether we like it or not, it's the reality of what's on the ground. And my fear is he gets in office, and this is hypothetical. He gets in office, and there's all kinds of expectations for him, much like there were for Obama. And the reality is, hold on, I'm about to go do a training.
All right, he'll be back in a second.
Yeah, okay, here you go. I'm mic on.
Okay.
And he gets in office, and the expectations are so great for one thing to pass, that we can say change is possible, change is happening. And we know the way the GOP is going to be. They're going to be totally against everything. But the problem is going to be that he doesn't have a sufficient relationship even with the Democrats within his own party, well, not his own party, but who he caucuses with, to move certain things. The biggest problem that Obama had wasn't will in terms of health care. He wanted and advocated for the single payer option. But he didn't have Democrat votes to support it. He needed every Democrat vote to get it because he got no Republican vote. And so he had to cave in on certain things in order to in order to get in. And the only problem I have with Sanders is that the House right now is Democratic only because of the Democrats who won in red districts. And those red districts are not going to send those Democrats back if they support Sanders' agenda. And then the House is going to flip back and become a Republican bastion again. And we're back in 2010 with Obama and with a president who has even less support amongst Democrats than Obama had at that time.
So if we're looking at that dynamic, right, and we're asking people we're asking them to serve, we're asking them to be courageous, we're asking them to advocate, to go in and do the business of the people. And so if they go in there and the fear is an election, right, then they're compromised in terms of doing the work. So knowing that, so for instance, I look in where AOC is, for instance, it's Democrat, right? So I don't think a Republican's going to win that. But you now have, I mean, she's being primaried by 17 people because of her desire to go in there and upset the apple cart. I mean, you'd agree that she made a lot of corporate folks mad by exposing the stuff that she's exposed over the last year and a half. And so they want to get her out of there now. And so if you go in, and so again, I hearken to what Ayanna Pressley says. She says, if you're afraid of being marginalized or being called a name, don't even show up. So you got to understand the fight that you're getting into. But my belief is that most of the folks who are elected down there, they already know the fight that they're getting into, and the fight is one that they don't want to fight, right? They want to go in and they want to cape for corporate America. So when we see an anomaly down there, like a AOC or Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, or Ayanna Pressley, we need to be spending more time supporting them, and then identifying more candidates who are looking to primary those who are caping for corporations.
I hear you. This will probably be my last comment because I think I'm going to go through some place that I won't be able to have contact. But I think the race against time is going to be the biggest thing. I think you're right. I think that more progressive folk have to be elected to the House and to the Senate to support that kind of agenda. The question is, can he keep a coalition together over the 6 to 8 to 10 years it's going to take in order to do that? Kendra Horn in Oklahoma is never going to be able to support that agenda without losing her seat. And if she loses her seat by supporting that kind of agenda, what you're getting is going to be worse. And it's going to lead to the House being the minority. And then nothing gets done. And then you're Obama for 2010 to basically the end of your term as a result. And that's my only fear. I think if we found a way to do it quicker, get more people in office faster, so that we wouldn't have that issue, I would say that was more of a pragmatic point. I just don't see it. But I'll let you guys discuss that and debate that. It's always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, man.
You do the same. Bye-bye, y'all.
So listen, I don't know, Darren, if I still have you on the line. But one of the things that they're pushing now for, and you see it, is a broker convention. That is, and you saw, like a hint of it during the debate when they asked the question. They said, well, when you get to the convention, do you believe that the candidate who has the most delegates should be the nominee? And Bernie Sanders is the only one who raised his hand. The rest of them thought that the process should work itself out, which would be that you'd have a broker convention and superdelegates would have the opportunity to ignore what the people said in their voting and vote for the candidate that they want to vote for. So now it becomes just an inside party game again. I believe if that happens, you're going to have a complete implosion of the Democratic Party. I think that there's so much distrust out there now. I think that Donald Trump did a job, and I think that he, for his, and there's a lot to critique and criticize him for, and he deserves every bit of it and probably more. But the one thing that he did say, although he doesn't say it about Fox News, Fox Entertainment, is that all of the media is corrupt. All of it. So he uses Fox for his benefit, and he uses the pundits on there, Sean Hannity and the rest of them, to push his agenda, as does the Democratic Party use Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell and Chris Matthews to push their agenda. So it's all murky, it's all dirty, it's all filthy, and people see it for what it is now. And I think that people were really turned off in huge numbers, even though they tuned in larger numbers, to see the debate and to see Bloomberg on there because they know how he got there. And they know that it was his white privilege. They know that it was his money. They know that it was a corrupt political party that got him there. And so now, as they push forward and continue to ignore what seems, I think, to be the inevitable, which is going to be that Bernie Sanders is just going to continue to roll, and that they're going to continue to ignore him in the media, ignore him everywhere else, to try to eviscerate his, and to confuse people about democratic socialism and communism, or democratic socialism and socialism. So they'll continue to do all of that, and I think it's angering people. But when you get to the convention, if it gets to this, and you have a broker convention, I think you have a broken party now. I think you'll have 4 more years of Donald Trump. You'll have a broken party. And I think that what has happened in this movement, so this is why I continue to say it's not so much about Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders loses this because of a broker convention, and so Democrats lose, but they'll lose with the big L, you still have this movement. And so where Senator Rice was asking whether a coalition can be kept together and all these other kinds of things, what has been built is undeniable. You have millions and millions of people who want something different. They're never going, I don't think they're ever going back. And I don't know how you get a moderate or centrist party to ever go there, right? So I think you've got a chasm forever now. But you don't just have loud mouths. You have economic power. Because with a tweet, with a Facebook post, they can raise millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they can continue to challenge these congressional seats, these Senate seats, these local county committee seats all over the country, working to install progressives who have courage because they're building it the correct way. They're knocking on doors, they're getting a plurality of people who want change, and then they're operating from that premise, as opposed to the old paradigm that the party uses, which is that they control a very small few, they intimidate the rest, and then they usher in their candidates through, in New Jersey in particular, through line voting. So I think that things have changed forever with this, and I think that social media, technology has played a magnificent role in it. I think that Obama could have done a better job using his social media, other than just being a cheerleader that got likes and shares with his tweets and with his Facebook posts. That he could have used it to organize people around a policy and things like that, and it would have taken some time. But I think that he would have more credibility now. I didn't get a chance to talk to the councilman, but we'll talk another time. But I did have some information to share regarding Obama. So when I say that Obama was a fail for Black America, I guess one of the signature things that I look at is the I think it was $4.3 trillion worth of wealth that he transferred when he bailed out those industries, right? And that money didn't go to Black folks. So I don't care what other remedies or other things you talked about doing, nothing was going to catch us up. I mean, you literally put a turbo booster right on the backs of white America, and you sent them off. And then you gave us a pair of Jordans and told us to catch up. I mean, that's kind of what it was. So, do I like the fact that I don't have bare feet anymore, that you put a pair of Jordans on? Yeah, but it's undeniable that I'll never catch the turbo boost car that you put them in. And so in that respect, I say that he failed the Black community by not giving us a turbo boost car. What else is it that I wish I could be in the feed, guys, to see what you guys are saying. I can't. So somebody was able to call in, and I don't know. Do I still have somebody on hold? Everybody's gone now? Okay. But if somebody could call in and tell me if there's anything interesting in the feed that I should be responding to, I'm happy to do that. Is there anything else that I feel like I'm missing something, guys? So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna play our commercials, and then maybe in playing the commercials, I could remember the other thing, because there was one more thing that I wanted to share before we went off air. So I'm gonna play these commercials, and I'll see if I can figure it out. Here we go.
Do you have loss prevention or safety concerns? Black Belt Security and Investigations has armed and unarmed guards that can protect what is important to you. For security you can count on, visit www.bbsillc.com or call 1-800-493-1859 today.
It's time to turn up the heat in your house or apartment. So here are some fire safety tips from Diane L. Murray Insurance Agency to keep you warm and safe this winter. Don't overload your electrical outlets. Keep flammable items away from fireplaces and space heaters. And put a fresh battery in your smoke detector. Turn to Diane L. Murray Insurance Agency for your home and renter's insurance, or bundle it with your auto insurance and save. Call 908-686-4609 or visit dlminsurance.com today.
BBSI. BBSILLC.com.
There's only one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. It's something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
So there was a headline a couple days ago, and I meant to mention it a couple days ago. Florida can't bar felons from vote over fines and fees, court rules. So it says the state constitutional amendment was approved overwhelmingly by voters in 2018 to allow most felons who serve their time to regain their voting rights. So what was happening is you had felons who had served their time, but they did not pay whatever fines were required, right? So they got out of jail, but they owed money. And so the state was denying them the right to vote. And so now that's not the case anymore. I'll read a little bit of it. It says, Florida cannot, for now, bar felons who serve their time from registering to vote simply because they have failed to pay all fines and fees stemming from their cases, a federal appeals court ruled Wednesday. A 3-judge panel of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court upheld a Tallahassee federal judge's preliminary injunction that a state law implementing Amendment 4 amounted to an unfair poll tax that would disenfranchise many of the released felons. So, I'm glad that they could vote. I hope that they're able to to take care of paying off their fines. I got something in my inbox today, and I'm gonna see if I can get them on the show. Because it's important, and we'll see if they come. I'm trying to pull it up. There is, it seems, there's a group of candidates that have already been chosen, I guess, to be on the Newark Forward slate for the Newark Public School Board of Education. So here we go again. And it's a gentleman by the name of Hassani K. Council, Josephine Garcia, and Florisha Johnson. So I invite you to join our conversation, share with the viewers of this show what it is, why you're running, right? I don't want to know a platform because, like I said, you have no economic or political power, right? So there's nothing that you're going to be able to really do. The question is, why are you running? So knowing you don't have economic power, knowing you don't have political power, knowing that that these schools, when you look statistically, are factories of death, why are you running? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish, and why do you believe that you are the candidate who, if elected, could accomplish whatever that is? Those are the questions that we should be asking, guys. I mean, at this point, I'm sure there'll be a piece of literature that goes out, and there'll be a group of people that endorse them. But what I would ask you is, at this point, because this went from children's first team to the forward team, right? Ras Baraka, the mayor of Newark, was a part of both. And I'm going to ask you, what has fundamentally improved in the Newark school system? What have been the measurable changes by which you can look and say, you know what, these children who are coming out are now able to compete. These children are not in jeopardy of being swept up in the tsunami of artificial intelligence, right? These students can compete with neighboring towns like Westfield and Summit and New Providence. They can go down to Lawrenceville and they can compete. So if those things are not happening, then what is happening? What is happening? Why would a mayor and the council and the assembly folks and anybody else that you see is going to wind up endorsing this ticket of candidates, why would they go and do it? Because it's a $2 billion institution. It's got a budget of $2 billion. And much like Paul Inman said yesterday, or I think it was Eric Dixon said yesterday, that in Irvington, the mayor controls all of those levers, right? Controls the Board of Education. He controls City Hall. He controls the Housing Authority. He controls all of these levers. And people are employed in all of those places. And those employees vote for him because they want to keep their job. And their friends and family vote for them because they want to see their loved one and their friend keep their job. And that is the built-in core vote that they wind up getting. So, I don't know if we'll get them on the show, but I'd like to get them. And anybody else who decides that you are going to throw your hat in the ring, if I'm jaded about it, it's because I already know what's going to happen. Nothing. None of these people have the acumen. They may be, and I don't even know how well intended they are. But let us take that leap and say that they're all well intended. None of them have the acumen. They're all, we know, because they're all on this slate, they're all tied in to the party already that we already have said is failing us. Right? By the fact that they've taken this brand, which is a brand larger than their own brand, right? So I don't know who this guy is, Hassani K. Council, but I would guarantee that if Hassani ran on his own, he wouldn't win, right? Wouldn't be able to raise money, right? Wouldn't be able to garner the support. But running on the Moving Newark Schools Forward slate, right, and assuming that name, and that being plugged in to the mayor and him being plugged into the Democratic Party, and then all of that just nastiness being together, there's no good that can come out of it. None. And I think that most voters have kind of gotten to that point now. So the question again is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when you see Hassani put his name up there and say that he wants to be a part of this failed system and continue to sell garbage as hope? What are you going to do in terms of having conversations with Josephine Garcia about saying you want to just continue to be a part of this failed system, but you're not speaking out about it? But you prop it up in everything that you do. What are we going to say to Florisha Johnson? Same deal. Maybe well-meaning. I don't know. But you're propping up a failed system. And so you are aiding and abetting an institution that is wreaking genocide on our community. That you're doing. So, listen, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank Ron Rice, Senator. I'm sorry, I keep saying senator because his dad is the state senator. But Ron C. Rice, former councilman, the great city of Newark West Ward. I want to thank him for calling in all the way from Maryland, I believe, on his way to D.C. But he took the time to call in and have a conversation with us. What I want to do, guys, I want to play because I referenced it early on. And it is that Killer Mike video, which I think is killer. If I can find it, I'm going to play it. Do I not have it? Oh, man. I don't. Oh, here we go. I'm going to play this Killer Mike video, which I think, Farrakhan, is a much more compelling video, by the way. I haven't seen the Bloomberg video, but I don't need to see it because I know he's just caping, right? I know you guys to pay some models and, probably well-produced commercial. But at the end of the day, we know, based on past performance, what future outcomes are going to be, right? That's what we do in corporate America. Past performance, projects future outcomes. So we've seen the past performance, the 12 years as mayor, the other years as a Republican, his disdain for people in general, the amount of contempt that he showed by showing up on a stage where he knew there were going to be tens of millions of people watching, and he didn't think that it was important enough for him to prepare. I want you to understand that. There $58 billion, but he didn't think that it was enough to prepare. He just felt that I just need to show up here because I got all the money. And what did he say? And it was a lying video that he put out too, right? Where he asked the question, he said, I believe I'm the only one that has built a business. But then he took the commercial and he edited the people in a way that they looked befuddled. But they didn't look befuddled when he said it. They didn't understand the comparison to his ineptitude here, his ability to build a business, and as Bernie Sanders says, on the backs of folks who for 40 years haven't gotten increases. So anyway, I think this video is better, and I'm going to play it.
I just want to say one of my favorite writers growing up was a man named James Baldwin. And I remember Baldwin saying, you ask my father to wait, my brother to wait, my uncle to wait, how long must I wait on freedom? How long must I wait on rights and equality and liberty? And as a black child, that resonated with me because I knew I'd been denied and I personalized that. But as I grew, I started to understand poor white people have been denied. Women have been denied. Gays and lesbians, transgender people been denied. Immigrant children been denied. Everybody outside of that 1% has been denied. So I want you to take a few seconds to look to your left and look to your right. Look to your neighbor and say, neighbor, the time is now. There are more of us. We're stronger. We will wait no longer. The time is now. When you go to that booth next year, I need you to carry in that booth the memory of this room. Black, white, straight, gay, men, female. We are together. We are united. Our time is right now. We will not wait 4 more years. We will not wait 20 more years. We will not wait 2 more presidents. We will not wait 3 more presidents. The time is now. The time is not in the future. The time is not some abstract time. The time is not something that might be. The time ain't something that could be. The time ain't nothing that should be, that would be. It ain't tomorrow. It ain't the day after. It ain't coming next week. The time is. Senator Bernard Sanders will be the next president of the United States of America. Thank you all.
There's only one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. It's something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
Thank you guys for tuning in. I just want to say 60 years ago today, members of the Nation of Islam murdered Malcolm. Enjoy your weekend.